Diane was driving from North Carolina to her son's law school graduation in Massachusetts. She had carried legally in her home state for 19 years, clean record, valid permit, a pistol locked in a hard case in her trunk, unloaded, exactly the way she had been taught when she first got her concealed carry license. Her route took her through New Jersey for less than 90 minutes. She did not know that New Jersey does not recognize her North Carolina permit. She did not know that New Jersey is widely considered one of the most difficult states in the country for traveling gun owners. She believed, the way most gun owners believe, that there had to be some kind of federal protection for simply passing through a state on the way to somewhere else. She was right. That protection exists. It has existed since 1986. She was also wrong about one critical detail of how that protection works. And that one detail is the reason she spent 2 nights in a county jail, lost her firearm to state evidence custody for 19 months, and paid for a federal defense attorney to argue a law that was specifically written to prevent exactly what was happening to her. Here is what almost nobody tells gun owners before they cross a state line. There is a federal law that protects your right to transport a firearm across the country, even through states with the strictest gun laws in America. It is real. It has been real for 40 years. And the gap between what gun owners think this law guarantees and what it actually requires is currently costing people their freedom, their firearms, and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I am going to walk you through exactly what this law says, exactly how it protects you, and exactly the moment it stops protecting you if you get even one detail wrong. This is the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986, specifically the provision known as 18 U.S.C. Section 926A. And what it does is create what attorneys call a safe harbor for interstate transport. Here is the plain language version. If you can legally possess your firearm at your point of departure, and you can legally possess that same firearm at your final destination, federal law protects your right to transport it through any state in between, regardless of how restrictive that state's gun laws are. It does not matter if the state you are passing through would never issue you a permit. It does not matter if that state bans the exact firearm you are carrying for its own residents. Congress wrote this law specifically so that a person's constitutional right to travel would never be held hostage by the most restrictive law along their route. That is the protection. Real, federal, binding on every state in the country. Now here is where I need you to lean in, because this is the part that determines whether this law saves you or does nothing for you at all. The protection only applies if your firearm meets 2 non-negotiable conditions for the entire duration of your trip through that state. The firearm must be unloaded, and the firearm must not be readily accessible from the passenger compartment of your vehicle. Read that second condition again, because this is where almost every wrongful arrest under this statute actually happens. Readily accessible does not mean illegal to touch. It means a court's definition of how quickly you could reach it from the driver's or passenger's seat. A firearm in your glove compartment, readily accessible. A firearm under your seat, readily accessible. A firearm in a center console you could open in 2 seconds, readily accessible. Even a firearm in a soft case sitting on your back seat, depending on the state and the specific court interpretation, can be argued as readily accessible. If your vehicle has a trunk that is mechanically separated from the passenger compartment, the firearm needs to be in that trunk, ideally in a locked hard case, with the ammunition stored separately. If your vehicle does not have a separate trunk, the law requires the firearm to be in a locked container that is not the glove compartment and not the center console. Diane's pistol was in a locked hard case. That part she did her right. But her ammunition was in a separate bag sitting on the back seat, within reach of the passenger compartment. And that detail, That single detail about ammunition placement was enough for the arresting officer to argue that her firearm did not meet the full protection of federal law. Here is the second thing almost nobody understands about this protection, and it is more important than the storage requirement itself. In practice, this federal law can be limited, and several courts have treated it as what is called an affirmative defense, rather than a guarantee that prevents arrest in the first place. Let me translate that out of legal language. This law does not function like a force field that stops an officer from arresting you on the spot. It means you can still be stopped, detained, or formally charged under state law, even if you are, in fact, in full legal compliance with federal protection. The law becomes the argument you and your attorney raise after the arrest, in front of a judge, to get the state charges dismissed. Gun rights organizations have specifically pushed to shift this burden, arguing the state should have to prove a traveler did not meet the federal requirements, rather than forcing travelers to get arrested first and prove their compliance afterward in court. That reform has not happened nationally, which means right now, today, in 2026, you can be 100% compliant with federal transport law and still spend a night in jail before that compliance gets you anywhere. This is most acute in two specific states that gun rights attorneys flag constantly: New York, particularly New York City, and New Jersey. Both before and after this federal law was enacted, gun owners have repeatedly run into serious legal trouble traveling through these two states specifically, even while doing everything the federal statute requires. So here is your actual protocol if you are traveling with a firearm across state lines, built directly around where this law protects you and where it currently does not. Step 1. Check every single state on your route, not just your destination. Before you leave your driveway, look up the firearm laws for every state your route passes through, including any state you might enter for a rest stop, a gas station, or an overnight hotel stay. This federal protection covers passing through. It gets significantly murkier the moment you stop for a reason that is not directly related to continuing your travel. Step 2. Unload completely. No exceptions. Not partially unloaded. Not chambered with a full magazine elsewhere in the vehicle. Completely unloaded for the entire duration of travel through any state where your firearm or your permit is not recognized. Step 3. Use a trunk if you have one. A locked hard container if you do not. If your vehicle has a trunk mechanically separate from the passenger compartment, your firearm goes there. If you drive an SUV, hatchback, or any vehicle without a true separate trunk, your firearm needs to be in a locked hard container, and that container cannot be the glove box or the center console. Soft cases create unnecessary legal risk. Spend the money on a locked hard case. Step 4. Store ammunition separately from the firearm and store it just as carefully. This is exactly where Diane's case went wrong. Ammunition sitting loose in the passenger compartment, even with an unloaded, properly locked firearm in the trunk, can be used to argue the firearm was still effectively accessible. Lock your ammunition in a separate container, in the same inaccessible location as your firearm. Step 5. Minimize stops in any state with restrictive recognition of your permit. Courts have not uniformly settled whether extended stops during a trip, like an overnight hotel stay, remain covered by this protection. If you are passing through a state like New Jersey or New York, plan your route to minimize any stop beyond what is strictly necessary for fuel or immediate safety. An extended stop is exactly where this protection becomes legally uncertain. Interstate moving. Step 6. If you are stopped, know that this is a legal argument, not an instant shield. If an officer in a restrictive state finds your firearm during a stop, do not assume citing this federal law on the side of the road will end the encounter. Be calm, be cooperative. Do not argue the legal theory with the officer. State clearly that you are traveling under federal transport protection, comply with the officer's instructions, and save the legal argument for your attorney and the court. This is a defense you raise afterward, not a guarantee that prevents the stop from happening. Step 7. Contact an attorney immediately if you are detained, before you say anything else. If you are arrested or charged in a state your firearm passed through, contact an attorney who specifically handles federal firearms transport cases before you make any further statements. This is a specialized area of law, and the federal protection you are relying on needs to be raised correctly and immediately. Step 8. Document your entire route and timeline before you leave. Keep a simple record, even something as basic as a Notes app entry, of your departure point, your destination, your planned route, and your departure and arrival times. If your compliance with this law is ever questioned, a clear, contemporaneous record of your travel purpose and timeline supports the argument that your transport was a continuous, lawful journey, not an extended stay in a restrictive state. This protection is real. It has existed for 40 years. It exists because Congress recognized that a person's right to travel should not be erased by the single most restrictive law along their route. But it is not the force field most gun owners assume it is. It is a precise legal standard with exact requirements, and currently, in several states, it is a defense you raise after an arrest rather than a guarantee that prevents one. Diane eventually had her case dismissed. Her attorney successfully argued full compliance with federal transport law once the ammunition storage issue was clarified in court. But it took 19 months, thousands of dollars, and 2 nights in custody to get there. You can avoid every part of that by understanding exactly what this law requires before you ever start the car. If you found this useful, share it with anyone you know who travels with a firearm, whether that is a road trip, a move to a new state, or a trip to a competition or a range in another part of the country. This is exactly the kind of information that needs to reach people before they need it, not after. And if you want to know what happens when you are moving permanently to a new state with your firearms, not just passing through, that is the next video. The rules change completely the moment your destination becomes your new home, and almost nobody gets that transition right on the first try. I will see you there.